When she was gifted a doll by her neighbour, she thought it was strange, especially when the neighbour mysteriously disappeared afterwards. But she had no idea what horror awaited her. Hi, my name is Shar, and this is the And Other Stories podcast, where I tell stories of the supernatural and criminal, both real and fictional. Works of fiction written by me. My doll. The pitter-patter of the little feet is the sound that will drive me insane. She pauses briefly as if listening, and then breaks into the run of a playing child, slowing down outside my room and releasing a joyous giggle. My chest is painful. She might succeed in her quest to scare me to death in moments. Or maybe death is not her goal. She would drag me to hell with her. Sending her away was a failed attempt. The blank black eyes stared up at me as I sealed the cardboard box, and I could feel her malevolence beside me while I drove her far out into the countryside and threw the box out of the still-moving car window. It felt like a weight had lifted that day. 3 days of torture and tension, from the day my neighbour had shown up at my door, her eyes crazed, her hair matted and sticking up at odd angles. She held out the doll with its red wool hair and thread smile, offering it to me with a smile that seemed to mask a sob. Please, take it. With confusion, I had just taken what she offered, and she ran as soon as it had left her fingertips. I watched her as she walked straight from my door to her car, got in, and drove away with such ferocity that she left marks on the tarmac. I had simply walked back in and thrown it in the corner of the living room, with vague thoughts of giving the doll to my niece, even though she lives 500 miles away. I could keep it for their next visit. It started the very first night. I awoke to a crashing noise in my room. I was so groggy I couldn't determine if it was a dream or reality. I sat bolt upright in the pitch black, rubbing my eyes and trying to listen to any more sounds. But there was nothing. I was settling back down and trying to sleep when I heard it for the first time. The rapid, soft thuds of footsteps in the dark. My eyes flew open once more, my ears straining to hear. I reached over and pulled the chain to switch on my bedside lamp, and I saw her. She was lying on top of a pile of books which had fallen out of my bookcase. Her face was looking right at me, and she appeared still and lifeless. My heart hammered as I swung my feet out of the bed and walked slowly toward her. I picked her up and stared at her, turning her over, feeling the soft stuffing underneath the fabric body. Her arms and legs hung loose like a puppet, her wool hair flopping back and forth with each turn. My first thought was, there's someone in my house. I opened the door carefully and peered into the dark hallway, arm fumbling on the wall to find the light switch. I switched it on, and there was nothing. The silence pressed on my ears. Still carrying the doll, I walked along the hallway, flicking on every light in every room, looking in cupboards, checking windows and locks. Everything was locked. Everywhere was empty. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed sat up in my bed watching her, blank, lifeless eyes staring right back at me. I didn't dare move her. My head spun with possibilities. I could have been sleepwalking. Maybe I didn't leave her in the living room. Maybe I left her on the bookcase and it was overloaded. Maybe. Anything to distract from the thought that it was her. She was an inanimate object, a child's toy. But my mind kept going back to my neighbour and how she looked when she dropped her off. Why did she want rid of her so badly? I watched the sun rise, and when the clock showed 8 a.m, I went straight out of the door, grabbing the doll as I went. I strode straight across my lawn and my neighbour's, heading for her front door. Ringing the bell several times, I peered through the narrow window in her door, trying to see her coming. It was dark and empty. My thumb started to ache, pressing the bell over and over until I got frustrated and walked off around the house toward a window. One hand holding the doll by her limp arm, I raised the other to shade my eyes to see in through the glass. Their living room was completely bare. No furniture, no toys for their daughter, empty, clean spaces where their sofa and other items had stood. I walked quickly down the side of the house, forcing open their side gate and entering their back garden. The two large windows at the back were the bedrooms, and I pressed my face up to them to see inside. The scene was the same as the living room. Only one room had a solitary stuffed toy lying upside down on the floor, forgotten in their rush to leave. Stomping back across my lawn, I walked past the bin at the end of my path, lifted the lid, and threw her in, slamming the lid back afterwards. I tried to put her out of my mind for the rest of the day. The longer the day went on, and the longer I worked and ate, watched television, and drank a lot of coffee, the more I realised how ridiculous it was. The neighbours were probably just leaving her with me as a goodbye present. The neighbour was just frazzled from packing and moving. I always thought that bookcase looked precarious. By the night time, she wasn't even a thought in my mind, and, tired from the lack of sleep the night before, it wasn't long before I drifted off into a deep sleep. I awoke a few hours later. I was groggy and nothing made sense. Was that laughter? I thought a noise had woken me, but now there was nothing. My heart caught up to my senses and started to beat fast, surging adrenaline through my veins. The darkness stayed quiet for the next few moments, and I started to calm, rubbing my eyes as I became fully awake, realising that my fears yesterday may have caused some nightmares. I was about to settle back down again when the tiniest giggle cut through the silence. It had come from right outside my door, and when I snapped my eyes round to it, the unmistakable sound of little, rapid footsteps trailed away. I grabbed for the light and pulled the chain with force, illuminating the room with blinding light. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 999. 999, what's your emergency? There's someone in my house, I whispered. Address, please? I stammered out the address as she assured me someone was on their way. Are you in a safe place? I don't know, I answered honestly. The fear was so strong I felt like I was going to be sick any moment. The siren and lights came after what felt like an eternity. I had moved to the corner of the room, clinging to my phone like a lifeline, and I heard them knocking down the door, entering and shouting. One of them came to my bedroom, escorted me out, and started asking questions that I had no answer to. It was only 5 minutes later that they came back out, saying there was no one there. There had been no sign of a forced entry. There was no one in the surrounding area either. I could see the annoyance in their eyes, the way they took the statement without seeming to write anything down. They stayed until the locksmith arrived, and with a simple, "Call us if you see anything else," platitude, they left. I walked back into the house, tired and embarrassed, wondering if I had really called the police over a dream. But, as I went to flop back down on my bed, there she was, half propped up on a pillow, staring right back at me. That was when I had started trying to get rid of her. I had first gone out into my garden, piled a few twigs and dry leaves together. With shaking hands I had drawn out a match and struck it against the rough side of the box, throwing it into the pile I had created. She still lay on my bed, smiling blandly, head tipped to one side. I picked her up by the wool hair, dragging her outside and throwing her into the fire. I sighed as I turned, wiping my nose on my hand, dripping from the tears that had flowed since the night before, from tiredness and fear. I wrenched open the back door and closed it behind me, closing my eyes and leaning against it, head tipped back. A girlish laugh caused me to gasp, eyes flying open. She was sat on a chair that had been pulled from the dining table to face the door, leaning forward, head facing me, black eyes fixed and lifeless. And arranged all around the base of the chair, the entire contents of my knife block had been placed neatly in a circle. I screamed and ran at her, grabbing her and pulling a box from the kitchen, roughly wrapping it up and running to the car. My free hand grasped at my matted hair. The morning air was cold against my skin that was bare around my pyjama trousers and vest. I had half expected her to be there when I got home. I walked in holding my breath. I only started to relax when I checked every room, every cupboard. This was when I started to believe that the nightmare could be over, that things could go back to normal. But here I am. I woke a few minutes ago to the laughing, the tiny footsteps, the shadow under the door darting back and forth. I am frozen in terror. My vision seems to swim in and out as the handle of the door starts to slowly creak. It turns down millimeters at a time until the click of the catch releases and the door starts to slowly swing open. My survival instincts seem to kick in, and I launch myself to the door, and teeth chattering, hands shaking, I pull the door open. There she lies, right outside my bedroom door. Beside her cloth, fingerless hand lies a large kitchen knife. Something inside me is snapping. I scream as I swoop down and grab her, running through the hallway, grabbing my car key as I go. I fling her in the passenger seat and start to drive, wavering across the road lanes, unable to see from the tears that gather in my eyes. After a few minutes, I can see what I'm looking for. The building is still lit up, and I slam the brakes on, parking across the pavement, almost on the steps that lead up to the door. I grab her and start to run, up the stairs and into the large room of the reception. I suddenly realise I am leaving a large trail of blood as I walk. I had left in bare feet and must have stood on something and not even noticed. I am still screaming as I reach the desk and slam her on it, shouting unintelligibly to the police officer as he stares at me in horror. I'm not sure what I'm saying or what I'm trying to say. All I can think is, evil. I start to drift as people come running out, grabbing me, saying things I don't understand. But I keep my eyes fixed on her, right up until I lose consciousness. The people in the ambulance inject me with things when I come to. I start to scream again, forcing myself up to try and sit, while they force me back down. My eyes can only rove the ambulance, looking for her. But I can see nothing, and I start to calm, the warming effect of the drugs relaxing me, the soft rumble of the engine taking me further from her. When I wake again, I am in a dark room with just the orange glow of streetlights through the window to see by. It is quiet and calm, the drugs they gave me still flowing through my veins, keeping me from my hysteria. I tried to sit up, but they have secured my wrists and ankles to the bed. My head is able to lift and scan the small room I am in. She is not here. I am far from her, safe. I close my eyes, drifting, almost gone, when there's the soft pitter-patter and the little giggle. Thank you for listening. I hope you liked it. My name is Shar, and this is the And Other Stories podcast. See you next time.